I love springtime. It's not a very big window here in Texas. It's pretty narrow, but I've been watching the leaves grow and the flowers have been coming out, and it's been really nice. I find inspiration in plants all the time. I took a little trek to the botanical gardens to get a little extra inspiration a couple weeks ago. And there was some art installations, as well as, of course, these amazing plants that just have these crazy forms and shapes that, you can't, you can't make up. It's just so, I think it's the source of a lot of my imagery. But yeah, you don't see it unless you pause. I've been trying to keep up with being active, pedaling to the studio, walking to the studio while it's still nice out. I had the chance to rearrange my studio with my studio mate and just opened it up in such a way that has been so lovely. I have this giant canvas that's a little bit daunting maybe, but I'm focusing on some other work right now, so it's just going to have to wait. I spend, roughly 3 consecutive days in the studio every week. One day I take a break for myself, and the rest of the time I have another job. So when I do go to the studio, I'm playing. I'm really just investigating color right now and form and pausing as much as I can. I have a show coming up in about a month. And for that, I've decided to do all smaller abstract pieces. So that just really invites play into my process so much more when I know I don't have to have anything representational. And it totally informs my work when I do representational work, but I think play is just so valuable. So that's what this next show is going to be about. I find myself, scraping and rubbing and layering on all these colors as if I'm trying to make sense of it, or some kind of story, underlying story, familiarity comes out. I put all these paperworks on wood panels. So luckily I have a couple of woodworkers that have spaces nearby, and I get to take their scraps. For these smaller pieces, this is perfect for me. I can use these to build the panels, and that's probably what I'm going to be doing the next few weeks. But for now, I'm just going to enjoy my space. Have the doors open while I can before it gets into the triple digits, and just try and enjoy it as much as I can. This is a really solitary practice, and I think it's one of those things that it's something not a lot of people realize, how much alone time you have with your thoughts, with your ideas. But I've generated a pretty good amount of work, and so I have this is the time to start really organizing it and really assessing what it is I want to display, maybe how I want to display it, what makes sense, And every time I go back to the studio, I get to revisit this work with fresh eyes and realize like, oh, that's not actually done. Oh, that needs a little more of this, or something's unresolved here. Like, it's all play, but at the same time, there's some kind of sense being made. Still trying to focus on color, but I can't help but to want to create some kind of balance or some kind of completion, sense of completion, which sounds kind of futile in the scheme of making art, but that's where my brain goes, and that's kind of how I navigate these paintings. Often I'm not sure, that what the end result is going to look like. Actually, I never really know what it's going to turn out like, but I just continue, pushing these colors and these shapes and seeing what's being told to me at the end. A lot of these paintings have dozens of iterations, but I just have to be patient with it. I worked at my house one day, just didn't want to leave in the rain, and that was actually really nice. But once it cleared up, I still made it over to the studio. Once these pieces have time to dry, I'm able to go in and really get messy with them again. And while sometimes there's something clearly being said in the first layer, sometimes it takes, 6-7 layers for me to get to that place of, oh, this is it. This is the thing. And sometimes it's about how the different colors are reacting to one another, how the layers sit on top of each other. It can be so many things that, communicate some sort of sense of finality. As I collected a dozen or so of these smaller works, I'm reminded of some other larger pieces that I had started on weeks ago, months ago at this point. And while I do work on a lot of different paintings at once, I think if I'm not physically working on a piece, sometimes I'm thinking about another piece as I'm creating another one. So, it just shows our brain's capacity to take so much on. But I think each painting kind of informs the other one while I was doing this. And I learned something about color or shape, and I would use it in the one that preceded it. So I pulled out this larger piece that I had revisited. And just jumped right in with something a little more bold once I realized the colors were getting a little more uniform than I wanted them to be. Again, that's one thing, by doing the process is when you learn from the colors that you're creating and the shapes that come out. And even just the notion of turning a painting around to see it from another perspective is just, again, another super valuable lesson I forget sometimes. This larger piece ended up feeling like some kind of aerial view of land. Something totally familiar, but also completely imagined. And I like that. So I feel good about where all this work is going, and I can't wait to start mounting it. I've got about a month to kind of figure it out, assess it, and hopefully that assessing and figuring out will happen much quicker and more like in the next coming weeks, because I'll be, like I said earlier, just building panels. One day at a time. I hope that your March was good, and I'll see you in April. Thanks for watching.